Okay, we are live with episode 3 of the I Help Men Dress Better podcast. Well, assuming no one has already taken that name. So in our first episode, we spoke about the 3 archetypes: rugged, refined, and rebellious. And in episode 2, we dove into the refined archetype. Today, we are going to be diving into the rugged archetype. I'm going to bring some examples as well as talk about some of the attributes of the rugged archetype. So, the rugged man, I think, can most easily be described as kind of physical. So, where the refined archetype is very social, there's a lot of connection to the financial world, the social world, very people focused. The rugged archetype is much more connected to the land and physical endeavors. So that can be strength, that can be physical capacity, but that's also your skills, your ability to build, your ability to make something, do something physically, right? The rugged man, you know, like I bet you if I said, think of a rugged guy right now, probably has a beard or kind of like tastefully messy hair, not super like polished and put together, right? The refined man, he would want to be polished. The rugged man, maybe there's paint splatter on his jeans, on his carpenter pants, and, mud, just like stains you can't really identify, but that tell you a story about the sort of work that he does, right? So the rugged man is very physical, very in tune with the the real world, right? Not the social world like the refined man, more like the real physical everyday world. And it's funny because in a way I think that the rugged archetype is one of the easiest maybe to identify because you can think of work where like we kind of know the sorts of clothing that we associate with work, but it's also interesting because it's still a very diverse archetype, right? Because you have like the military, right? Anything war related, very physical. Anything kind of more blue collar is physical work, but there's also some other ways that you can kind of connect to the rugged archetype. Like if you are an artist, but you're more of like a physical artist, like a sculptor, or like a very like physically involved like painter. And that's not to say that it will be your primary archetype if you're in that kind of field, but there's sort of like an artisan quality to the rugged archetype, right? Uh, I have um, my business coach works a lot with kind of more blue collar workers, and he he mentioned a client of his who talked about how his art is like is the pipes, like he's a plumber, and his kind of creativity, his art, his expression is the way he builds his plumbing, right? There's like a beauty and a science to it. So while I think creativity, at least to me, and I think maybe in general, is usually a little bit more associated to the rebel archetype, I do think that there is sort of an artisanal appreciation for kind of like the physical beauty of the world and also the beauty of just reality is something that I think is very much like embodied in that rugged archetype. And it's also interesting because when you think about style, like style is a big part of style is being very intentional. And I think that there's a quality to the rugged archetype that inherently kind of doesn't care about how something looks as much as how it functions, but it's also important to bring intention to that storytelling to, transmit that. So I think that's I don't know, just something that's coming up for me about the rugged archetype that I think is kind of interesting. But I think it also shows you how even the guy that you wouldn't think of as being interested in style or intent in their style, even they can benefit from bringing some intention to the way they dress. Even if their primary concern is going to be more how something functions, but there's also a function to the way that we communicate socially. So even though the social realm might fall more into the refined archetype or the rebel archetype, there is still a social component intrinsic to being a man and intrinsic to being a human that the rugged archetype still has to exist, and someone who's you know trying to bring intention to their life and bring intention to their style, in that there's still like an importance to that. So I don't know, just thinking about that, I thought it was just kind of felt interesting to me. Let's take a look at some of the influence. Like, I brought up some creators who dress in the rugged archetype, and I wanted to share those with you. So let me share my screen here. Screen. We are going to look over here at. So this is a buddy of mine, Jordan, aka Nifty Thrifty, and he just has a beautifully rugged style. You can see that everything he wears, it's very focused on durability, lots of boots, right? These kind of heavy, sturdy, functional boots. But I mean, like, these are beautiful boots, right? There's nothing, we're not sacrificing aesthetic on the altar of function, but there's still a clear functionality in everything. And you can even see in the way that he grooms, nothing's super overly kempt, right? You can see with, like, he's got a mustache. There's other nods, right? Because you have to remember that your style is not just the clothing that you wear, it's everything. It's your grooming, it's how you put it all together, right? And if you go against the grain of what you're wearing in your grooming, if it's not intentional, that can really undermine everything. But if it is intentional, it can actually add another flavor, right? Like, if he went and decided that he wanted to be super clean cut with like a clean side part, something very refined, here you can see kind of a little undone, a little more relaxed, which fits the vibe. But if he went against that, that could tell you something else about him, right? There are definitely people who mix in a little bit more of that clean refinement, but you can see all of these pieces. These are beautiful pieces, right? I think a lot of guys think of style as like suit and tie, but if you can look at this and tell me that these aren't just incredibly stylish outfits, incredibly just beautifully put together outfits, then I just don't know what to tell you. Like, these are, yeah, they're more casual, they're more rugged, but like, how can you say that this looks less intentional than, someone putting together a suit and tie? It's just a different context, right? His context does not call for suit and tie. His context calls for this style. And of course, a lot of this is also going to be an expression of who he is, right? Even, down to the details. Like, these watches are very utilitarian, almost brutal in a way. Let's move over to, let me move to this, share this tab instead. This is Bronson MFG, or Bronson Manufacturing. This is actually a brand that I've bought from in the past and that I have bought for clients, that I've had clients shop from. And this is also, I just think this brand really beautifully embodies ruggedness in a way. Even if some of their looks might lean a little bit more into the rebel archetype, I think that the pieces that they make are just so, they're all incredibly beautiful. They're drawn from history, which I think is also something that there's a lot into to history and style in general, right? Because when we talk about style as a visual language, we have to understand that language comes a lot from what came before us. People agreeing on what words mean, what different ideas mean, and so a lot of what clothing means is going to be drawn forth from the past, and so referencing the past in this way can really tell you a lot. These are all like military inspired. You can see like even this hat, like this is an interesting hat. If you wore this hat in real life, it would probably lean more like rebel. It would be interesting, it would be unusual, but it's so rugged. It's like it's made of denim. It's definitely drawn from, you know, something very physical, either military inspired or here's like sport inspired pieces. Of course, anything materials like leather. I mean, come on, that's a no-brainer. And that's not to say that leather can't lend itself to other archetypes, but materials like leather and denim definitely lend themselves to you know, the rugged archetype. Look at this, like even just, boxing, physical sports, there's just an intense ruggedness here. And you can really just see it right off the bat, right? These are people in looks that the moment you see this clothing, you know that this is a physical person, right? This is someone who works with their hands, or at least identifies deeply with that, right? It could be that you grew up working with your hands and now you're in more of a corporate job, but when you see this, you just resonate with it, right? You feel like that's more relevant to who you are. Yeah, just beautiful stuff. Absolutely beautiful. Let's move back. Um, I hope that this discussion has helped flesh out the rugged archetype a little bit, and that those images that we just went through help you understand that more. If you are not watching the video podcast, I would recommend at least watching it for that past piece. It's worth it to see those images. I do also plan to post this on YouTube, so just got to get around to that. So that will also obviously be more of a visual experience. The archetypes, and because I've been discussing them, I've been thinking about them a lot more and kind of what they help you do. And as you're learning the archetypes, I think what will be really helpful for you is to start to look at clothing and ask yourself, what is it this garment's like primary archetype? Like where did this come from? Obviously that is something to think about, but also like what does this make me think of? Right? Like I love this sweater. This is actually from, okay, well, if you can't see it, it's a fisherman cable knit sweater. Now, of course, this was made for rugged purposes. It's a fisherman cable knit, right? But then historically that's changed. It's moved a little bit more into, refinement. I think anyone can really wear this. It's a very versatile piece. But the point is, like, if you want to really understand your style and style in general, the way that we're using the archetypes is not only to look inward and describe ourselves, but then be able to take that language and apply it to clothing so that when we go out into the world, when we're shopping, when we're evaluating our own wardrobes, when we're thinking about the pieces that we want to buy, we can ask ourselves, like, what am I trying to express with this? Am I trying to express my refinement, my ruggedness, my rebelliousness? You know, where would I look for this? You know, I really like this piece, but it doesn't meet my archetypes, right? Those sorts of things. It can really, thinking like this can really help you just make better decisions when you're buying and when you are figuring out what you need to buy. These aren't just lofty abstract principles. The idea behind these abstracts is to really get an understanding of yourself in a way that you can then use that language to express yourself with clothing in a way that other people can then understand. Because the same way you can look at those denim jackets and leather and workwear denim and carpenter pants and think to yourself, okay, that's rugged. When someone else sees you in that, they know that too, right? When you are wearing a suit with clean lines and just very crisp edges, that is telling other people that there's a refinement to you. We haven't gotten into the rebel archetype yet. We will talk about that next week. I'm very excited because I don't know. I like the rebel archetype, and that's not to say that it's any better or worse than any of the other archetypes. They're all just equally valuable and important. And there's, like, you might find yourself wishing you were another archetype, something like that. It's not, you can, we all have all three, but we all have one primary. Just, there's so much you can do with each one. There's really no reason to look outside of yours. As far as like wishing you were maybe another one, right? I think a lot of guys feel the pressure to wish they were the rugged archetype. I feel like there's a lot in the discourse around masculinity that says that a rugged man is more manly. But I really think that not only are these archetypes incredibly useful tools for your style, but I also think that your style, because it's an outgrowth of yourself, it's so intertwined with your personal development and personal growth. And I really hope that if you are one of these other archetypes, that you can see how there are so many ways to be a man and so many ways to be masculine and to express yourself in a masculine way in the world, right? Like, the rugged archetype is not any more masculine than the refined or the rebel archetype, even though they all express differently, and even though society may value the masculinity of one of them more than the others. So, yeah, hopefully that helps. I would love to hear your feedback in the comments. If there was anything that caught your attention that I didn't flesh out as much as you'd like, I would love to answer your questions. It is always helpful in making better content as I go. Like I said, I would really like to post this on YouTube as well, so we'll get there. Have a wonderful day. I hope you gained something here, and I will see you next week. Take care.